Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. My husband's family gifted me a car for my birthday. A month later, I was pulled over. It had been reported stolen. We needed it back. His mother told me, "You didn't really deserve it." I called my husband and he said it wasn't meant to be permanent. Thuffy. Police let me go, but only after I proved the title transfer was fake. I hired a private investigator who found that the same vehicle had been used in a scheme. That I should have known something wasn't right when Rick's mom, Brenda, smiled at me that night. You know, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. That tight, smug expression, like they're doing you a favor you didn't ask for. That was Brenda. We were at this restaurant in downtown Charleston. Nice place. Linen tablecloths, candlelight, the whole thing. Rick, Brenda, Carl, his dad, and me. It was my birthday, and they'd made this big deal about a surprise. They handed me a key fob in a tiny box. Brenda leaned in and said, "We thought you'd like to feel a little more respectable." I should have seen the warning signs. I didn't. I was flattered. Stupid, I know. They walked me outside, and there it was. A white Lexus GX parked out front, with a bow on the hood. Rick stood there grinning like a used car salesman. Brenda had her hand on my back, like she owned me. Carl? He was already on his phone, barely paying attention. I was so overwhelmed I didn't think to ask the obvious. Why me? I mean, I'm not flashy. I drive a beat-up Honda. I didn't think the Davenports even liked me that much. I just figured maybe this was their way of welcoming me into the family, right? Maybe I'd finally earned a spot at their table. For the next month, I drove that car everywhere. Grocery runs, Target, picking up my niece from school. I even drove Brenda to her hair appointment once. She was all smiles, talking about how I finally looked the part. Rick was distant, but I chalked it up to work stress. Then came the day everything went to hell. I was driving back from work, halfway, across the I-526 bridge when I saw the flashing lights behind me. I pulled over, heart racing, thinking maybe I was speeding. The officer walked up, leaned in and said, "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle. This car has been reported stolen." I thought he was joking. I even laughed. Then I saw his face, dead serious. I was shaking so bad, I could barely unbuckle my seatbelt. He took my license, registration, everything. I told him the car was a gift. I showed him the birthday card I'd stuffed in the glove box. He didn't care. He said the title didn't match. The VIN number had been reported to the police a few days ago by the registered owner. Some company I'd never heard of. They were ready to tow the car right there on the spot. I called Rick, my hands shaking. He sounded annoyed, like I was bothering him. He said, "Claire, calm down. It wasn't meant to be permanent." Permanent? What the hell did that mean? Then Brenda called. Her voice was cold, clipped. She said, "Claire, we needed it back. You didn't really deserve it in the first place." I swear to God, I almost dropped the phone. After an hour of pleading and showing every scrap of proof I had, they let me go. But only because the officer admitted it looked like the title had been faked. He gave me a warning and told me to get it sorted, or next time I might not be so lucky. I was humiliated. I felt like a criminal. That night, Rick came home late. I asked him straight up what the hell was going on. He just sighed and said, "Look, my family handles things a certain way. Sometimes it's complicated. Just let it go, Claire. It's not worth the drama." Not worth the drama? That's when something in me snapped. I realized I'd been a pawn in some sick game. They didn't see me as family. I was a prop, someone they could use, then toss aside when it suited them. I couldn't let it go. I drained my savings, what little I had, and hired Sean, a private investigator. Sean was this grizzled ex-cop from Somerville. The kind of guy who doesn't sugarcoat anything. I gave him everything I had, Emails from Brenda, texts from Rick, the fake title. He said he'd seen shady stuff before, but this smelled real bad. A week later, Sean called me back. His first words were, "Claire, you're not going to believe this." Turns out the car wasn't just borrowed, it was part of a pattern. Brenda and Carl had been pulling the same scam for years. They'd give out cars, nice ones, luxury models, to girlfriends, friends, even a couple of extended family members. Then, after a few weeks or months, they'd report them stolen. Sometimes they'd claim insurance money. Other times, they'd use the car as collateral for loans they never paid back. A few cars were involved in staged accidents. Sean found records of claims, filed in Atlanta, Savannah, even up in Charlotte, and it got worse. That Lexus? It had been used in a staged accident scheme 2 years ago in Georgia. A woman, some poor nurse named Sherry, ended up getting sued because they'd left her name on a forged title. The Davenports had been doing this for years, ruining people's lives, and no one stopped them because they were respected in the community. They had money, lawyers, connections. The whole town thought they were this classy family who gave back to the community. Brenda even chaired a charity for underprivileged kids. It was all fake, but the worst part? Sean found out Brenda had opened a line of credit in my name, using that stolen title as collateral. I had nearly $40,000 in debt hanging over me, and I didn't even know it. My credit was tanked. I couldn't even apply for a basic credit card anymore. I felt sick, like my stomach was caving in. When I confronted Rick, he didn't even deny it. He just sat there, staring at the floor and muttered, "Claire, you're overreacting. It's not that big of a deal. My family's always done it this way. Not that big of a deal?" I realized then that Rick wasn't just complicit. He knew. He had always known. And he didn't care. That's when I knew I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to burn them down. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. Not this time. I'd been humiliated, lied to, and nearly arrested. And now I had nearly $40,000 in debt hanging over my head because of them. I wasn't going to be another victim. I was going to make sure they paid. I spent the next few days holed up in my apartment, barely sleeping, going over everything Sean had found: the fake loans, the staged crashes, the shell companies Rick's dad used to shuffle money around. It was deeper than I thought. They had a whole system. Brenda's name on some accounts, Carl's on others. Rick even had a side account tied to a consulting firm that didn't exist. And it wasn't just cars. Sean found records of rental properties in Atlanta and Charlotte, owned by Brenda. Shell companies where they'd take deposits from tenants, never make repairs, then evict them for bogus reasons. They were grifters, plain and simple, and they'd been getting away with it for years. But I had a problem. I was broke. I'd already burned through my savings hiring Sean. My credit was trashed. No bank was going to help me. And Brenda had lawyers, the best money could buy. If I tried to take them down on my own, they'd bury me. That's when I had an idea. I remembered a woman Rick dated before me. Her name was Valerie. They dated for a year, and I'd met her once at a holiday party. She seemed nice, but Rick always said she was crazy, said she tried to sue his family after they broke up. Back then, I thought she was crazy. Now? I wasn't so sure. I found her on Facebook, sent her a message. "Hi, Valerie. I know this is out of the blue, but I really need to talk to you. It's about Rick's family. Please call me." I didn't expect her to respond. She called me that night. Her voice was tense, guarded. But when I told her what happened with the car, she exploded. She said, "Oh my God, they did the same thing to me. They gave me a Mercedes for my birthday." A month later, the cops showed up at my office. They told me it was stolen. I tried to fight it, but Rick's family had lawyers, and they scared me into signing an NDA. I thought I was the only one. Turns out, Valerie had been forced to sign a settlement agreement. Brenda paid her off with a check that bounced 2 weeks later. She tried to sue, but they'd threatened to ruin her reputation. She was a nurse too, and Brenda had friends on the hospital board. Valerie still had the paperwork, the bounce check, the NDA, the emails, all of it. I wasn't alone. I asked Valerie if she'd be willing to talk to Sean. She agreed. And once we started digging, the dominoes started falling. Sean found 3 more women who'd been through the same scam. One of them, a woman named Tanya, had her credit destroyed, like mine. Another, Melissa, had been evicted from an apartment. Brenda had gifted her, then turned around and sold the place at a huge profit. Each story was a little different, but the pattern was the same: fake generosity, then betrayal. It was all a game to the Davenports. Sean told me, "Claire, this isn't just civil fraud. This is a criminal enterprise. RICO-level stuff." I felt sick, and I felt angry, and I felt angry. She agreed. And once we started digging, the dominoes started falling. Sean found 3 more women who'd been through the same scam. One of them, a woman named Tanya, had her credit destroyed, like mine. Another, Melissa, had been evicted from an apartment Brenda had gifted her, then turned around and sold the place at a huge profit. Each story was a little different, but the pattern was the same: fake generosity, then betrayal. It was all a game to the Davenports. Sean told me, "Claire, this isn't just civil fraud. This is a criminal enterprise, RICO-level stuff." I felt sick, and I felt angry. They thought they were untouchable, that they could keep ruining lives and no one would stop them. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to just take them down in court. I wanted them exposed, publicly, for everyone to see. So I called in a favor. My college roommate Lauren worked as a producer for a local news station, one of those I-team investigative units that loves a juicy story. I told her everything. At first, she was skeptical. Then I sent her the paperwork, the emails, the forged titles, the fake loans, the shell companies, Valerie's NDA, the bounced checks, the other victims. Lauren called me the next day, her voice shaking. "Claire, this is huge. We need to run with this. Can you go on camera?" I hesitated. I wasn't sure I was ready to put my face on TV. I was scared. But then I thought about Brenda's smug voice. "You didn't really deserve it." I thought about Rick's cold shrug. It wasn't meant to be permanent. I thought about the $40,000 of debt in my name. I said yes. Lauren's team started filming. They interviewed me, Valerie, Tanya, Melissa. They blurred out faces when needed, but they made sure every single document was verified. They even sent a producer to stake out Brenda and Carl's house, caught them on camera, meeting with a shady guy at a diner in Mount Pleasant, handing over envelopes. But I wasn't done. Sean and I started building a timeline. Every car, every fake loan, every property. We mapped it out, connecting all the dots. Sean said, "Claire, this is what the feds need. This is bigger than you think." I sent it all to the IRS Fraud Division. I sent it to the FBI's White-Collar Crime Unit. I sent it to the State Attorney's Office. And then I waited, but I knew Brenda. She wasn't going to sit quietly. Sure enough, 2 weeks after the news aired, I got a letter from a lawyer, one of Brenda's lawyers. They were suing me for defamation. Me, the woman they nearly got arrested for stealing a car they gave me. They accused me of slander, of ruining the reputation of a respected family. Rick even had the nerve to text me, "Claire, I warned you, you can't win this, just let it go." Let it go? Hell no. I was just getting started. I wasn't going to back down. They thought they could scare me into silence, but they didn't realize something. By that point, I had nothing left to lose. Rick's family was suing me for defamation, trying to crush me in court. The lawsuit was full of lies. They claimed I'd made malicious statements that had caused irreparable harm to their family business and standing in the community. They wanted $250,000 in damages. At first, I was scared. I mean, they had money, lawyers, power. I had a wrecked credit score and a PI on my side. But I wasn't alone anymore. Valerie and the others, Tanya, Melissa, they were pissed too. I called them, told them about the lawsuit. And you know what they said? "We're in." They were done being quiet, done being scared. Lauren's news segment aired the next week. They didn't just run one story, they ran a whole series, The Car Scam Family. A Charleston woman speaks out. They had everything. My story, the fake titles, the staged accidents, the bounced checks, even the blurred faces of Brenda and Carl handing over cash at that diner. The news hit hard. Social media blew up. People were tagging the IRS, the FBI, the state attorney's office. They were demanding answers. And that's when the real twist came. Sean called me late one night. "Claire, you're not going to believe this. I found something big. Real big." He sounded almost nervous. Turns out the car scam? It wasn't just about cars. The Davenports were moving money through real estate deals too. Buying up cheap properties, laundering the stolen insurance money through fake renovations, then flipping them for profit. They were even using Shell, companies tied to offshore accounts, places like the Cayman Islands, Panama. Brenda had been laundering the money for years, and Rick? He wasn't just some clueless husband in the background. He was in on it. Sean found emails, Rick forwarding, documents, wiring payments, even coaching a woman on how to handle the loan paperwork for a fake car deal. My own husband, when I confronted Rick about it, he didn't deny it. He smirked. "You think you're some hero, Claire? This is how things get done. You're just too naive to understand. Go ahead, take us to court. You'll lose. You don't have the money to fight us. We'll bury you in legal fees." That's when I snapped. I realized they weren't just crooks. They were arrogant. They thought they were untouchable. So I did something I wasn't sure I had the guts for. I went straight to the FBI, walked into the local field office with a binder full of Sean's reports, emails, photos, timelines, everything. I told them the whole story, and I told them I was willing to testify. That's when things started moving fast. Federal agents started interviewing me. They called in Valerie, Tanya, Melissa. They started digging into the Davenports' businesses, bank accounts, real estate deals, tax filings. Lauren's news team ran another story, this time about the offshore accounts. And then, like clockwork, Brenda doubled down. She started spreading rumors about me around Charleston, told people I was a liar, a troubled woman, that I had mental health issues. She even said I'd been obsessed with Rick and jealous of their family success. Rick? He played the victim, went on Facebook and posted some vague nonsense about family loyalty and how some people will do anything for attention. I was so angry I could barely breathe. But then the tide started turning. People I barely knew started messaging me. Old friends of the family, former employees of the Davenports, even a few distant cousins. They told me stories about Brenda's backroom deals, Carl's tax evasion, Rick's consulting business that didn't exist, about women who'd been screwed over, tenants who'd lost deposits, people whose credit was ruined. It was worse than I thought. And then, the best part. Sean tracked down another victim, a man named Leo, who'd worked as a mechanic for Carl. Leo had records, repair invoices, handwritten notes, even photos of cars being staged for accidents. He'd kept it all, because, in his words, I knew one day they'd screw me over too. Leo was ready to talk. I gave everything to the FBI. They told me it was enough to open a full-blown investigation. The Davenports still tried to scare me. I got an envelope in the mail, no return address. Inside was a single photo, me standing outside the FBI office. A threat, but I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I called Sean. He just said, "Good. That means they're scared." And I knew. This wasn't just a civil case anymore. This was criminal. I was going to bring them down. It all came crashing down faster than I expected. 3 weeks after I handed everything to the FBI, the Davenports' perfect little world shattered. It started on a Tuesday morning. Federal agents raided Brenda and Carl's home in Mount Pleasant at 6 a.m. They swarmed the place. FBI, IRS, even the marshals were there. They took boxes of files, computers, hard drives. Brenda was hauled out in handcuffs, still wearing her robe. Carl, too. Rick? He was arrested at his office later that day, looking stunned in his tailored suit as they cuffed him and walked him right past his coworkers. I watched it all unfold live on the news, cameras everywhere, helicopters overhead, Lauren's news. Team broke the story wide open. Local family faces federal charges for fraud, money laundering, and wire fraud. And then came the charges. 86 counts of fraud, wire fraud, bank fraud, tax evasion, identity theft, conspiracy, money laundering, racketeering, Rick's consulting business, fake. The loan companies Brenda ran, shells, the staged car accidents, insurance fraud, through and through. And the offshore accounts, millions stashed away in Panama and the Caymans. It was a freaking empire of lies, and they'd been running it for over a decade. I'll never forget the day I walked into the courtroom. Brenda, sitting there pale and tight-lipped. Carl, hunched over like a beaten man. Rick, looking around like he still didn't get it. Brenda glared at me as I took the stand. I looked her dead in the eye and told the whole story, how they gifted me that Lexus, then reported it stolen. How they opened credit in my name. How they ruined my life to make a buck. Valerie testified too. So did Tanya, Melissa, Leo. A total of 9 victims came forward. The courtroom was packed. Reporters everywhere, Rick's friends, their old country club buddies. They all showed up, but no one spoke up for the Davenports. Not a single person. Brenda tried to blame it all on Carl. Said she was just following his lead. Carl blamed Rick. Rick tried to act like he was an innocent bystander. Said he had no idea what was happening. But the emails, the wire transfers, the photos, they told the truth. The judge wasn't having any of it. Brenda got 18 years in federal prison. Carl got 15. Rick? He tried to cut a deal, but it was too late. They gave him 7 years. Plus, he had to pay $600,000 in restitution to the victims. But that wasn't even the best part. The government seized everything. The Davenports' mansion in Mount Pleasant, gone. Their beach house on Sullivan's Island, gone. Brenda's fancy cars, the jewelry, the offshore accounts, all seized. Seized. They even took Rick's 401k and drained every business account down to 0. I watched as it all unraveled. Their friends dropped them like a bad habit. No more country club invites, no more charity galas. The whole city turned on them. People who used to fawn over Brenda wouldn't even look her in the eye. And me? I rebuilt. It took a while. But I worked with a lawyer to clear my name, fix my credit, and file for damages. I sued the Davenports in civil court and won a judgment for the full amount of the debt they'd racked up in my name, plus punitive damages. I got a check, 6 figures. I bought myself a small townhouse, paid off every bill I had, fixed my credit. The first thing I did after the dust settled, I bought a used Honda Civic. No bells, no whistles, just a car that was mine. As for Rick, he tried to write me letters from prison, begged for forgiveness, said he was a victim too. I never answered. Last I heard, Brenda's trying to run Bible study groups in prison. Carl's been hospitalized. Twice. Rick lost most of his hair. And me? I'm free. No more lies, no more games. Just me, standing tall, knowing that they'll never mess with another person like they did me, because I burned their whole rotten empire to the ground. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.